Hey, what's up, prospectors? Millsy here. Let's talk Icarus. So before I release my Beta 5 weekend gameplay video, I wanted to talk about the game since we've had 5 beta weekends of gameplay to dissect the game. Anything from biomes and wildlife to missions. So far, I love all the things we've been given in Icarus, but one thing. First and foremost, let's talk about the 3 different biomes we've gotten to play in. The forest, Arctic, and desert. The forest biome is lush and green. It feels alive. From everything to the sounds around you to the actual wildlife, oftentimes even surprising you right in your face. As someone from the Pacific Northwest in the United States, it truly does remind me of the forests around here. Almost to a point where they meant it by design. It's kinda nuts. My first time venturing into the Arctic, I got vibes from the movie The Thing. Some of you folks may not know what I'm talking about, but I recommend checking the movie out as it's a very good movie. It takes place in Antarctica, and what reminds me of it so much is how open and vast the Arctic biome is. It's almost like it was meant for the intention for vehicles, and for us prospectors to struggle on foot until we get that polar bear armor. It really is a vast and daunting biome, with packs of wolves where the largest pack I've come across is 12 in one area, to polar bears on the hunt. It's definitely not a biome to venture into without a few required things unlocked for survivability. The third out of the 3 biomes we've gotten to play in is the desert biome. This is probably my favorite biome. It feels like a mix of the Grand Canyon and the Outback. I knew based from some gameplay trailers that Rocketworks have put out that the desert would have some oasis feeling parts to it, such as the palm trees and rivers. What I wasn't expecting was how much water supply would actually be in it. If any of you are returning viewers, you know I play with Slothos a lot. I recommend checking him out on Twitch and YouTube as well. But we were fully prepared to get a few canteens of water before heading into the desert. To be pleasantly surprised that there was plenty of water in the desert biome in general. Now I know we haven't been able to play the entirety of the biomes, so I almost wonder when they open those areas up that were previously unplayable, if it becomes more barren and survivability becomes much harder. As it stands right now, the desert biome is almost where I'd like to start out and establish a base with the vastness of iron nodes inside the caves. It still has tons of wildlife and water sources from the river. I know drinking from a river can be, kind of risky, getting debuffs, and obviously I didn't see any sort of rainstorm, hence the desert. So maybe I would choose to build on the border of the desert and forest and keep that rain reservoir in the forest part of the biome where it still gets some rainstorms. During Beta Weekend 4 and 5, you were able to play the Broken Arrow missions, and Beta Weekend 5, Black Sand. If you watched my Beta Weekend 4 video, you know my group did 2 playthroughs. The reason we did 2 playthroughs was the first one, the bosses were bugged out and didn't trigger encounters. So aside from the Black Jaguar, we didn't experience the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson polar bear or the mammoth. So we did our final playthrough getting those encounters in. What we did find during these encounters was kinda odd. I'll start with this. During the Black Jaguar encounter, it spawned fairly quickly behind the satellite crash and stayed in one spot until we aggroed it when we got close enough, and then we one-shot it with a hunting rifle. At this point, we thought to ourselves, alright, maybe the bosses don't have added hit points or anything special about them aside from just looking unique. Being that we got this character encountered twice, we knew where it would spawn and knew it would go down fairly quickly. When we got the roided out polar bear to spawn, it actually took a while to spawn in general. We were well into that armored timer for the warhead in the South Arctic before it actually spawned. I turned around and it was right there behind me, aggroing onto me already. Sloth shot at it but got one hit by the bear. I tried to run around the satellite to juke it, but it got me in one hit as well. The bear then ran to my body because I was dead pretty much right by the satellite, and it put its head inside where the warhead was and was just stuck there. It could not move. So when we were running back to pick up our dead body pallets to retrieve our items, I ran away in disbelief as the polar bear was just kind of stuck there growling at me as I was able to run back and forth getting both Sloth's items and my items because we didn't know that at the time that it was stuck. So once we got our hunting rifles back, we just kind of stood by it and killed it. We anticipated the mammoth to spawn in behind the satellite as well, but instead it spawned in on the satellite. And to no surprise, it was also just kind of stuck there. So while we're shooting at it, we're also trying to get it unstuck. Eventually, running around the satellite, we did get it unstuck, but it was just about dead by the time it started chasing after us. Now, why am I mentioning this to begin with? Well, quite frankly, this is the state of the game at the moment. Honesty is what I'm giving based off my experience playing this game so far. None of this is a bad thing though. And why is that? Rocketworks, who is based in New Zealand and currently on lockdown due to the pandemic, is working their asses off to get fixes out during each beta weekend, if possible. Most things are fixed by the next beta weekend, and when I say most, they have a priority system on how they tackle these bugs, to game-breaking bugs, to bugs that are experienced the most. My YouTube short video of going into third-person mode in my dropship and being headless is not necessarily game-breaking. So although it will be fixed, and I think by the time this video comes out it wasn't as prioritized as something like duplicating items in your inventory to break the game. So I'll tip my hat to Rocketworks for the hard work that they're doing. One thing that Rocketworks has also made very abundantly clear is that they are in fact working on the animal pathing. The beta weekends that we have played is with the Black Arrow missions was the first set of missions with all those types of bosses aside from the mammoth, and that could be kind of a result of this. They knew that it was a bug when we were going through the beta weekend, so I imagine that it's just something that's easily fixed, but still, it was a part of my experience, thus I have to kind of report on it. So far, the missions are something that I find very refreshing in a survival game. It adds purpose to adventure, it adds purpose as to why you're there. Aside from mining for exotics, which we're still yet to do, it's nice to have multiple things to do on your prospect. Missions are also something that my group have been discussing in our playtimes together. If I manage to keep your attention this far into the video, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this. My problem with the missions is that it's tied to the prospect itself and not the player. I'm not entirely sure what the rewards are for missions as we currently don't receive rewards for completing them, but let's just use this one example. If I start a prospect, I'm just getting started by gathering resources, building up a shelter to keep my workbenches, etc. Sloth Ocelot joins, but I have to leave shortly after. Okay, that's fine. We all get kicked out of the prospect when I log off, and then he can join back up with his character as it's now tied to that prospect. He then becomes the new host. Sloth then decides to keep gathering resources, building up a shelter, getting more workbenches, and then he has a friend who joins up on him. His friend and I may not know each other at all. His friend character is now tied to the prospect that I started. Sloth logs off, his friend logs back in to keep playing, and might decide to do some missions tied to that prospect. I log back on the next day or a few days later. It really doesn't matter, knowing that we have 21 days of prospect mission time, and I see the missions are complete when I come back and I did not do them, yet they are tied to that prospect. Thus, I miss the experience and lore of completing the missions in this prospect. This did actually happen during our first playthrough of Broken Arrow, as Broken Arrow was completed by Sloth and I, and our buddy Batman wasn't able to play until the final day of that weekend, so we had completed all 3 missions. He then jumped into our prospect and all 3 missions were completed for him. So all he had to do was take back off in his dropship, experiencing no missions, no bosses, which is why I believe that the missions should be tied to the character, not the prospect. If there is anything I missed as far as the developer news about this particular issue, I haven't seen it. That doesn't necessarily mean that there hasn't been something said. I've just been busy with work and I haven't been able to keep up with all of Dean's streams or perhaps developer streams if they have been doing them on YouTube. But please let me know in the comments if something has been said. Aside from that with the missions, I have to say that the game is definitely on the right track with developers who care about their product and seem to really care about their customers' experience. Being gamers themselves, you can tell they pride themselves on their work and Quite honestly, it shows. 5 beta weekends in, and each weekend it gets harder for me to wait for the next weekend to come by. Let me know what you guys think down below, and as always, I'll see you on the next one, prospectors.